So when was the last time you asked for help? Do you remember when the last time you actually asked for help?
This morning.
This morning? Awesome. But, you know, technology has made it really easier for us to ask for help. With our cell phones, we can text or message. But, you know, a lot of times we just don't ask for help, do we? So, when was the last time you actually seriously asked someone for help? Julie asked for someone for help this morning. But most of the time, we say, I'm good, or I got this, or I appreciate your help, but thank you. I can do it on my own, right? You've done that, haven't you? See, Bartimaeus had no trouble asking for help, and the results were just incredible. He's an example of the blessing that we can receive if we just allow others to help us. If we set aside our own pride and not wanting to inconvenience others. Isn't that the reason sometimes we don't ask for help, because we just don't want to bother or inconvenience someone? My mom tells a story when I was little, and it was Christmas Eve. It was snowing, and my dad worked for the city of Baltimore, so we always got called in to work when it snowed. So, you know, my mom was finishing up getting things ready for Christmas Day, and the phone rang, and it was our neighbor, Mr. Watt, and he asked if she had gotten everything, and she asked if my dad had been called in to work, and she said yes. And he asked, do you have everything ready for Christmas Day? And my mom said, yeah, everything's ready except for Darlene's bike. It's still in a box, and it hasn't been put together yet. And he said, I'll be right over. My mom could have said, no, everything is fine, but she didn't. She asked for help because she thought it would be much better on Christmas morning if that bike was put together rather than being in a box. Even though it was snowing, I wouldn't be able to ride it anyhow. It would have made Christmas just a little nicer. My mom later said that Mr. Watt was a blessing to us that Christmas Eve. But what if Bartimaeus had not asked for help? What if he chose not to ask? Arthur and Nora Claver in a book, Mayday, Asking for Help in Times of Need, says that the reasons we don't ask for help are we were never taught to ask for help. We love our independence. We don't think to ask. It's easier to do it ourselves. You know the saying, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Do you ever think like that sometimes? You just rather just do it yourself. My dad was notorious for this when it came to mowing the lawn. Never could mow it perfect, never could mow it right for him. So, except for one time he was recovering from surgery, and he said, Darlene, you know the grass is getting a little high. And I said, would you like me to mow? And he said yes. He never complained again. Maybe it's that we just don't want to owe someone something. We don't want to have to pay them back or owe them a favor. Or could it be that we're just afraid to ask? Maybe that's would be a sign of weakness, that we just can't do things ourselves. So we're very good at trying to do things ourselves, and sometimes we're not so successful. Have you ever tried a plumbing project where you thought, I don't need to call a plumber, I'll just do it myself? How did that turn out? Or you tried to fix the car and it just didn't turn out the way you wanted. Or you're driving somewhere and your GPS isn't working and you decide that you're not going to stop and ask for directions, that you can figure it out, right? Have you ever done that and wound up going around in circles? See, by not asking for help, we miss out on the gifts that someone else can give to us. You see, Mr. Walt didn't have to come over and put the bike together. He could have just said, a bike. I don't have time for that. It's Christmas Eve, but he didn't. My parents said later that he's told them that he felt blessed by being able to help out at Christmas Eve. And every time he saw me riding that bike, it just reminded him of the blessing that he gave our family. Bartimaeus is blind, but through the eyes of faith, he's able to see what others do not. He correctly identified Jesus as the Christ. The crowd tries to silence him, but he shouts even louder. Do you know what it's like to call out to someone and others are telling you to be quiet or to shut up? Have you ever had that experience? When you're calling, you're asking for help, but others are telling you to be quiet. Maybe those in the crowd thought that Bartimaeus was not worth Jesus' time. After all, he was blind and a beggar. He was an outsider in the community. Jesus stops and calls out to Bartimaeus to join him, perhaps just curious to see what would happen. The crowd now changes their tune. They change their mind, and they encourage Bartimaeus to move forward. The coat that was stretched on the ground around his feet to catch a few coins was tossed aside as he rushes towards Jesus. Before he has a chance to ask Jesus to heal him so he can see, Jesus asks him, "What do you want me to do for you?" Bartimaeus, without hesitation, he asks for his sight to be restored. Jesus tells him to go. His faith made him well. We can compare this story with the story of the rich man who walked away when he heard Jesus call him, because Jesus wanted him to give up all he had and to follow Jesus. Where Bartimaeus gave up his beggar's coat and whatever coins that were scattered by the side of the road to receive a gift, the gift of sight, and to follow Christ. The rich man's wealth became a burden, whereas the poor man's loss becomes an opportunity. The blind man places his trust in Jesus. Bartimaeus teaches us the importance of choosing carefully what we want in life. The rich man wanted to inherit eternal life. James and John wanted places of honor and power. But when Jesus asked Bartimaeus what he wanted, the blind man asked for the gift of sight. It's amazing how easy it is to lose sight and focus on what's really important. We need to remember what is worth our time and effort. God longs for us to choose carefully what we want in life. The other thing Bartimaeus teaches us is to pursue the desire of our hearts with great passion. Just think about this a moment. A person who could not see, who was determined, or maybe just stubborn. Nevertheless, he was determined to get Jesus' attention with the only means he had, his voice. His prayer was probably the loudest prayer Jesus ever heard. He followed the desire of his heart. In seminary, we were required to take several practicums. They were short classes, usually meeting like one time, once or twice. This one that I took required us to go to Sheriff Brooks. Sheriff Brooks is a Catholic worker house in Kansas City where 10 individuals live together. They share all the resources, all their money, they share their cars. They all pitch in doing chores. It's also a place of hospitality where 3 days a week they serve a hot meal to those who are homeless or living in shelters. They provide clean clothes. They provide a 15-minute hot shower. The meals that they serve are healthy meals, they're nutritious meals. They raise eggs. Yes, in the heart of the inner city of Kansas City, they have chickens. They have fruit trees and a garden. They receive donations of clothes, coats, and blankets. We spent part of the day at Sheriff Brooks, and the second half we spent on the streets of Kansas City, meeting and talking with the homeless. 2 of us were with the director, Eric, and Eric seemed to know everyone. As we were heading back, a man waved from across the street. Eric waved back and proceeded to cross the street. He introduced us to Carl. We talked to Carl for a while. When we turned to leave, Carl called out, "Can we pray together?"